I see yours. Thank you, Nathan. What's happening here? Okay, so good morning. I think we're still a small group this morning. Let me first put up my screen. Okay, I hope you can see that. So welcome to this practical learning session on writing effective and convincing abstracts. I hope some more people will join later. And if not, we can have a very engaged peer-to-peer learning part later on. So I propose we do not introduce ourselves or one by one, but give us a chat or give us a message in the chat who you are, where you're calling from, and maybe in what organization you're working. So what we're going to do in the session, if I can. Yeah, so our agenda for today is in the first part where we'll use 30 minutes, and I will first present some good practices for writing an abstract. This is based on what journals give us guidelines. And then after that, we'll have Sarah Cole, who is a communication specialist, and she will share some of her strategies for writing effective summaries for scientific audience. And then we'll have Alessandra Gallier, who's a senior CGR gender scientist at ILRI, who will discuss her experiences in writing abstracts and also in reviewing abstracts. Then in the second part, we'll give you the chance for peer-to-peer learning. So I hope you all brought your draft abstract or draft summary that you can discuss in your group and try to improve on your abstract together. Then we'll come back to the plenary, and we can you can share some feedback to the rest of the group that you think we can all learn from, and then we'll close the learning session. So let me start with this first part, some good practices. So maybe first, definition. An abstract is a few sentences that gives the main idea in an article or a scientific paper. So what's important, it's a few sentences, it's short, and it's about the main ideas, the key messages. Your abstract is actually some kind of selling pitch. So it informs the reader whether your article or what you want to contribute to a conference is actually a good fit with the journal aims or with the conference aims. And the reader will also want to know, okay, what is this about? How novel is it? What methods have been used? And I actually just got an email from some kind of journal that how to avoid a desk. Consider this, how to avoid that. One of the tips was get a good abstract. Make sure your abstract has all the information and shows what's novel, what's so important about your study. So it's also important to get that foot in the door. And then when your article is published, then it's again a kind of selling pitch for readers. They will find your article maybe based on title or on keywords, and then they'll read your abstract. And then from the abstract, the reader should be able to assess, okay, what is this study about? Is it interesting for me? What methods have been used? And if you can convince that reader again, he or she will read your article and hopefully cite your article in their work. So again, important for that. So your abstract for that purpose should give quick but accurate insight into what is your study about, why is it relevant, why should they care, how does it contribute to the literature or to the evidence, what's novel about it, what methods have you used, and what have you found out. And then, yeah, writing abstracts, it's not a science. but there's some guiding principles, some building blocks that you can use. And one, a first building block, it has to be short. It's if you look into the journal author guidelines, it ranges from 150 to 300 words. It's short. And then there's two types of abstracts. Some are structured and some are unstructured. In the development literature, agricultural literature, you mostly have the unstructured abstracts. In the more like medical, nutrition type journals or the exact sciences, they like the structured abstracts more. But I think the structured abstracts are actually interesting to learn from because they show you the key building blocks to an abstract. And structured abstracts always ask these 5 things: background, relevance of the study. 2, the objective, so your research question, research objective, the hypothesis you're going to test. 3, your methods, and then you can give more detail on the study design, the study population, your research methods. If you're doing an impact assessment, maybe also briefly talk about the intervention. Then 4, your results, and 5, a conclusion. And then if relevant, you can also elaborate a little bit on implications for future research, policy, or practice. Then there's something else. Some journals allow you to write highlights or ask you to write highlights. And for some journals, they want you to use the highlights to write about key findings. Other journals also allow you to write what's novel about your methods or a bit on the policy implications. If you have the chance to write highlights, then you can play around a bit with what's in your abstract and your highlights, and you can use your highlights to go a little bit more in depth, for instance, on your findings. But try not to repeat too much what's in your abstract into your highlights. Use them sort of strategically to give more information. Then some general tips and tricks and do's and don'ts. So I scanned a lot of the author guidelines, and these are some of the recurring tips and tricks from those guidelines. So first of all, an abstract should be self-contained. It's a standalone piece. A professor once told me, your abstract is actually a mini study. It should have all the elements that you have in your study: an introduction, your methods, your results, your conclusion. Some journals advise you to use a writing style that's accessible to a more broader readership. Other journals do not really like that. So you have to check in the author guidelines what they propose. Use keywords in your abstract. And one journal said, even for the discoverability of your article, they had a very specific guideline: use the maximum number of keywords in the first 2 sentences of your abstract. So I'll try that out. Do's: you have to be accurate in your abstract. So don't freestyle too much. Do not generalize if your findings show nuance or contextual difference. So make sure that you reflect accurately what's in your study. Also, your results that you give in your abstract should also be presented and substantiated in the main text. So don't come with new elements in the abstract. And generally, your abstract will be 1 paragraph. It's rarely split up into several paragraphs. Again, depending a bit on the journal. Don'ts: do not oversimplify claims and do not generalize beyond what's supported by your study. Also, do not exaggerate your main conclusions. No technical jargon, no terms that need further explanation. Generally, no citations and references, no abbreviations, no footnotes, no figures, or tables, unless you really opt for the graphical or the visual abstract, but that's another type of abstract that I will not discuss further here. Some guidelines by journals. World Development, actually, they use a unstructured abstract, but they have guidelines for a quite structured, unstructured abstract. If you could write your abstract this way, I think you'll have a good abstract for any journal. So what they propose is you start your introduction with a sentence that's more accessible for a broader audience. Then in your second sentence, you're more specific, more targeted towards a development audience, development practitioners, or development scholars. Then you have to present your research question and the problem, the general problem that the study addresses. Then your methods, your study approach, your methods, and anything novel about your methods or distinctive about your methods. Then your main results, and they're very specific here. They say these sentences start with our study finds or we show Then what's the significance now of the findings for practice or for the literature as compared to what we already know? So again, highlight what's novel, what's new about your study findings. And then for world development, then they want you to situate your results again in the broader picture. This is an example of a more structured abstract, as in PLOS medicine. So these are the building blocks that I showed before. So backgrounds, objectives, where you state your study hypothesis, your research question, then your methods with some detail, findings, and then conclusions. Now, in this example, for instance, there are some things that you would not do in a development journal. So you would not, for instance, necessarily quantify your results using a measure of precision. It depends on the journal whether they want that. Also, describing the main limitations of the study, that's generally not done in the abstract in development journals. That's more for the discussion section. But this is interesting to be inspired by. Then Taylor and Francis also gave some tips for more review papers, which follow a little bit a different structure for the abstract. So here you would give the primary objective for your review, why you chose that objective for the review, your main outcomes, results, and then conclusions and what they imply for further research, application, or practice. And I will stop here. I will share this presentation, and I also included all the author guidelines that I consulted for your further reference. And now I'll give the floor to Sarah, who will give us some guidance on how to do this now. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Els. Hello from Australia, everyone. Thank you for having me on. It's such a pleasure. I've been working with quite a few of you already for CDR doing editing, and it's wonderful to have those insights. I'll share my screen as well. Okay, so this for me is about helping you learn to make the most of your abstract, because as Els did such a beautiful introduction of, it is the most important part of your paper. People are really time poor, and this is really the signpost to tell them whether they should read and or cite your study. And it's also really important for discoverability for your search engine keywords that will come up to guide people to your work. You will write your abstract after you've written your paper. And I should just specify here, I guess I'm talking about unstructured abstracts and summaries here. As Els pointed out, which is very important, it's really important to research the journal style so that you don't get an instant rejection. It's estimated that usually up to 25, only 25% of abstracts are usually written in the wrong style and get an instant rejection. And if you do your research into the journal style, then you should happily avoid that. Okay, so choosing the right journal. This is really important because your readers are, if you get published in a journal, they have an expectation of the kind of content that they'll be reading about. So choosing the journal that fits not only with the subject matter and also geographically is really important. The questions you can ask yourself to choose the right journal for yourself is, does the subject matter fit, whether they've published on that topic before? How significant are your findings? This might take the form of whether you aim for a lower, medium or high impact journal. If you have very significant findings, then it's a great idea to go for a higher impact journal. But I guess we need to keep in mind there that higher impact journals have from maybe 75% to 95% instant rejection rates. So it's important to aim your work to the right audience. And also geographic regions of where your work is, number one, piloted or trialed, and also relevant as to whether you look for a national journal or an international journal. The other thing about choosing the right journal is that it will help you consider your readers and consider your key messages. The things that you have to think about before you start to write questions about your readers. What do you want to tell them? And that's really your key messages that have come from your work. What do they want to know? What is new? What are the implications from your work? And how did you find out? So this is something that's really important for journal abstracts in particular. If you're writing a more generic summary, say for instance, for a fact sheet or perhaps an article, then perhaps the method is not so important if it's going to a more lay audience. But definitely in abstracts, you want to keep that focus on your method as well. After you've thought about your key messages and perhaps written them down, I would suggest, after you've written your abstract, you can go back through and check that you've captured the essence of those messages and that you've emphasized them in the right order and that you've emphasized them enough. So this is your absolute, your signpost into your abstract, your title, writing your title. It needs to be interesting and it should capture your key results. I've given you an example on the screen. These are 3 examples progressively getting better, we would say, as writers, to pique people's interest and to also capture the key results that they found out. So the first one talks about an experimental analysis of the effects, in aquaculture enclosures. The second one hints at the actual results. And the third one provides a tantalizing keyword sex change. So that is an example of something that you could consider in your title, particularly saying what your key results are. There is sometimes room in a journal to have a little bit of interesting playing around with the title, and it obviously depends on your own personal comfort level as well, we would say. But you can write a very interesting title that is still within the bounds of scientific credibility. Our tips for writing good titles are that they're descriptive, they are specific and not general, they use simple words, avoid acronyms unless it's a very common acronym, say for instance SDGs or NGOs, something very common, and also use your keywords for the indexing purposes. So this is for an unstructured abstract, which I think this really goes for summaries as well. You can do a fantastic summary in literally minutes with these steps. And whether you devote a paragraph to these, if you're doing a summary, or just a few sentences, if you're doing an abstract, then that's up to you. First, what's your topic? Second, state the problem that you address. And then state why no one has adequately answered the question. Explain how you tackled the research question and describe how you went about doing the research. And then the key impact of your research. It's really important to summarize that at the end. So as Els went into, and I won't go very heavily into here, the writing an abstract for a research paper is a little different than from a review paper. For both of them, you want to write the abstract last, of course, but yeah, they have a little bit of a different focus there. For a review paper, you want to look at the scope and look at why you chose the sources you did, which is much less relevant to writing a normal research paper abstract. This is the bit that I love. I'm an editor and these are my exciting parts. Writing in plainer English. I have given you a long list but there of 17 tips about writing in plain English, scientific writing needs to be precise and clear and accurate, as Elle said. You don't want to dumb it down. You really want to distill it, but it doesn't have to be stuffy and hard to read. You want to challenge people with your ideas, not with your language. So I've put some tips here for writing in plain English. Some of them won't be appropriate for an abstract, but they're all certainly appropriate for summaries. For instance, bulleted lists won't be an appropriate method in an abstract. Something that's really important for us and that can often make your writing shorter is number 7, writing in the active voice, and also number 8, putting the action in the verb. Instead of saying, for instance, the maize crop was studied, you might want to say, we studied the maize crop, and then go from there. So that's a more active sentence. It's shorter, it's more direct, it's easier to understand who did what. I definitely recommend using this list as you are writing. And writing in plain English, here are some sentence level techniques, not just the word level techniques. We go into a little bit more about the active voice in number 1 and 2. I'd suggest you use short and simple words. Avoiding jargon and unexplained technical terms will definitely depend on your readership. I haven't gone into more details here, other than to say that what a technical term is and what is jargon will depend on the readership of the journal that you choose. And that should guide you as well as to which journal you choose. If you find that a journal, its style would have to explain all of those technical terms, then perhaps you might choose a different journal, one that's more specific to your needs. So the sentences can be short, keep them well constructed. That's great for any summary. A friendly tone is our general recommendation for summaries, but that is probably not so relevant for scientific abstracts. And show, don't tell. That is a fantastic way for you to increase your credibility by saying what you discovered rather than how good you were for discovering it. I would love to hear from you. I would like to offer some free editing suggestions for you. I won't be able to be around for the breakout groups, I'm sorry, but please feel free to email me, and I think Nathan or Els is going to send you this slideshow so you can get my email. Please feel free to send something to me. I'd love to help you out summarizing or writing an abstract. And that's me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm really looking forward to your tips. I'm going to put them next to me when I have to write an abstract next time.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, we'll make sure that this presentation is shared with you. Nathan already shared the presentation that I gave in the chat, so have a look at that. Maybe Nathan can do the same for Sarah's presentation. And meanwhile, I would also advise you to say hello in the chat so that we know who you are and where you're calling from. And now I would like to give the floor to Alessandra, who has written many abstracts in the course of her life, and also reviewed quite some abstracts. So Alessandra, from your experience.
Hi everybody, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting as well, and interesting to hear different perspectives on abstracts. So my presentation is going to be quite slow, quite short, not slow, quite short. I'm trying to just give you, some, let's look at some abstracts together and see what, how they could be written better or what is good about them. I'm Alessandra Gallier. I lead the gender team at the International Livestock Research Institute, where I'm also the principal scientist. So, I'm picking up on what Els presented. She said, your abstract needs to give a quick, accurate insights on what your study is about, why it is relevant, how it contributes to literature, what methods are being used, and what you found out. So this is the first abstract that I picked when I prepared this presentation. So if you look at this, it starts by saying informal milk trading in peri-urban Nairobi plays a key role in supporting both livelihoods and nutrition, particularly among poor households. And then this is a gender study. So, they bring, by the way, the gender dynamics. Gender dynamics affect who is involved in and benefits from milk trading, to better understand gender constraints and opportunity, and so on and so forth. So this first part really tells you what the study is about, and also why it matters. Why should the reader care about the issue? Because informal milk trading plays a key role in supporting livelihoods and nutrition. Yeah. So you can start by really showing why the reader should care about this topic. Yeah. And then what is the study about? The study is about the gender dynamics that affect who is involved in and benefits from milk trading. Yeah. And then you can specify the methodology. So we said the qualitative study was conducted in 2017 with 45 men and 50 women milk traders in Dagoretti, a peri-urban area of Nairobi, Kenya. Yeah. So this is a very short overview of the methodology, but that's fine. Abstracts are very short. And then you go into the findings. You have to bring in the findings in a nutshell. The findings show that milk trading is more lucrative for older men than for women and younger men among the respondents. Yeah. And then you can close the abstract with the implications of the findings. Yeah, this article discusses the implication of the findings for agricultural research and development interventions that aim to enhance sustainability and equity of the dairy sector. Then how much detail they want in the abstract depends very much on the journal, as you heard before. Yeah, but these are kind of the building blocks. Why should we, as readers, why should we care about this topic? And then, sometimes, of course, the problem is in there, like informal milk trade is very important. However, there is a problem about it. We do not know enough about who is doing what. And then when this study is about methodology, findings in a nutshell, and the implications of these findings. This is another abstract where you see that there are some, I would say, components that are missing really, and their accuracy could be improved. So this paper proposes an analytical framework that addresses the challenge of assessing food security in household in a contextualized and dynamic manner that takes into account intra-family inequalities, particularly gender. So I'm not sure the study really helps you understand, what is important about this topic you're addressing. I have no idea about this topic. So why does it matter, exactly? And what is the problem and what is this study about? And if you're writing a gender paper, don't just put it in brackets, if that's the topic, just, develop it properly. Yeah, don't just put it on the side as a side piece of information in brackets. So I think what is missing here is really why this issue matters. And also you already see that from the discussion about what this study is about, I don't know, in a way it's so specific that if as a non-expert reader, I'm completely confused about what this is going to be, what the topic is really. And then they go into the methodology. We do this through the dual operationalization of the food securitization and the capability approaches conducted in 2 steps, the conceptualization of the household and the proposal of a food securitization capabilities list. So again, I'm like, okay, there is a bit of methodology here, but the language is very complex. So back to what Sarah was saying, whoa, as a reader, as a reviewer, I'm like, oof, I need to read the same sentence 5 times to actually make sense of it, if at all. The findings are completely missing from this abstract. There is this whole introduction, and then I don't know what they found out. The implications are not there. And the abstract concludes, thus, our proposal includes key elements of analysis that have not been taken into account by traditional approaches. And again, as a reviewer, I'm left to wonder, like proposal, you mean the study maybe, or, key elements of analysis that have not been taken into account. So I'm basically completely confused. I don't think this is, this is missing the basic components and is not very accurate. And then I'm closing with another type of abstract that I also think is, quite good. This paper focuses on identifying the means to tackle climate change as it explores the key role women could play in developing and enhancing innovation. Yeah, this is what the study is about. And then it says, based on systematic literature review, so the methodology, in this case, literature review is actually, quite straightforward in terms of methodology. Usually there is a published protocol somewhere else. So fine here to just have that sentence. They say, we explore the impact of a stronger presence of women within institutions, They explain what they have done. And then they go to the findings. Yeah, more women within the technological innovation process promise greater productivity and better results. Yeah. And then look how the language is changing. So the findings are clearly associated to the verb show or reveal. And then when it goes to discussion and implication, they move to using argue. So we argue, and then that is actually the discussion, because it's not the findings that show something, it's the authors that argue something about the findings. We argued that more women in science would contribute to accelerating the development. We also argue that, and the second argument that they are making, the second implication. And finally, there is the one closing line, which is about the wider implications. The article concludes with a discussion of whether we need more women or feminine qualities within innovation processes. Yeah, so the little bit the bigger picture. And this was I just had these three abstracts. A couple of other thoughts that came to mind as I was listening. I thought it is an excellent suggestion to say an abstract is like a miniature of your study. So what I see sometimes when I review papers is that the authors present some findings in the abstract, but then the implications go well beyond the findings. There says in the findings something about the division of labor is unfair, whatever. And then discussion implication says, therefore, we recommend that we engage in capacity development or group membership. You're like, how do these implications build on the findings? So like in a study, the abstract has to be self-contained. Yeah, the discussion implications have to refer to the findings that you have included, not go beyond that. What else? One thing that I do sometimes, and Sarah, now this is a bit different from what you said, but just one thing that I say sometimes is that an abstract is also a good way of starting an article. Sometimes I write the abstract first so that I have in my mind all the key blocks of the article, and then you can develop them in the article. Yeah, it's one way of getting your writing of the article extremely focused. You just go back, first block, what it is about, and you develop it in detail. And then second block, methodology. In the paper, you develop it in its full length. And then findings and so on is one way to really make sure that at the beginning, before writing the paper, you're very clear on what you're going to write. But obviously, you need to revisit it once the whole paper is written, because it will change. As you write, as you analyze, things will change. One final comment about this one abstract 3, that I liked is that maybe I was wondering, and I don't know what the others think, is the first sentence doesn't really say why this issue is important. It says, focus on identifying the means to tackle climate change as it explores the key role women could play and so on. And it goes then more in detail after the methodology about the content. And I was wondering, maybe the first sentence could have been more about why the topic matters, why, identifying the means to tackle climate change and maybe gender or women, I'm not sure, is important. I don't know, maybe a question to the other presenters, climate change is so well known, are there topics that maybe don't need to, the importance of which that doesn't need to be explained in an abstract, or would you always explain why climate change matters and why gender considerations in climate change matter? So very glad to be here, and I'm curious to see if you have any questions.
Thank you, Alessandra. That was very enlightening to see what you look at in an abstract, and then how all those building blocks come back, and I think it's clear that in some abstracts they're a bit hidden or missing, and it's a great tip to go for that. Okay. So I propose that unless there's questions from the audience before we go into breakout rooms, are there any questions or things that you would like to have clarified? Okay, I think we can go into the breakout rooms. I see we have 7 participants, if I'm not mistaken. So Nathan is going to get you into a breakout room. So I propose we have 2, Nathan. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, so he'll assign you to a breakout room. One will have 3 people, the other will have 4 people, and I will try to hop from breakout room to breakout room. If there's any question that I can answer, feel free to answer that, to ask me. And Sarah will also try to stay a little bit longer and also hop to the breakout rooms. If you could Oh, can you do that for Sarah, Nathan? Because she might not be able, because she's not a co-host. Okay, so Nathan, bring us into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back to the plenary at 9 or like at 5 minutes to the hour. Nathan, could you then force us back into the session?
All right.
5 to the hour. Thank you.
5 to the hour. Okay. Just
Yep.
sending into
5
breakout
minutes to
rooms
the hour.
now.
Thank you.
Did you say Sarah should be in one of the rooms?
Yeah, it would be good if she can swap from room to room as well.
Okay.
But let's see how that works.
All right. Okay, sending you out to the rooms now.
Thank you.
Else, are you here? Sarah, can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Nathan.
Hi, Else.
Could you add another participant here? Because Alessandra is one of the presenters and I'm one of the presenters. So maybe another participant.
All right, let me move someone from the other room.
Okay.
And Nathan, you could maybe send me to the other room. Is there another presenter in the other room, else?
I'm
Okay.
not sure. Yeah,
I could do that. That's
thank
easier.
you. And then swap one of the participants to this room. Okay.
Room 2. Okay.
So
I've moved Gailey. Let me move.
Thank you. Okay. Meanwhile, Avni and Evaristo. Yeah, I'm just here if you have questions, so you can discuss. Oh, hi. Faridul or Hak? What's your name?
Faridul is fine.
Faridul. Yes, welcome. So I'm just here if you have some questions, or I can help out, but I would propose Avni and Evaristo and Faridul.
Hi, Sarah. All is well on this room?
Hi, Nathan. How's it going?
Okay.
Okay. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe someone might want to do a screen share and show us something that they've been working on.
If you have any questions from the presentations also, maybe. I only have 5 minutes left, so then I'll leave them.
I'm happy to open up, after the questions, I'm happy to open up a summary that I got through today from someone who I wouldn't use their name, but maybe we could look at some options for improving their summary if people would like to, learn with something that they haven't written themselves. I don't know, I'm not getting any answers just in front of me. I wonder if I can hear properly.
This is your moment. This is when Sarah
Okay,
can
well,
support you. So
let me jump into it. I will open it up and then I'll share my screen and we could maybe talk about some, sorry, let me just get it open. And we can chat about what we could do. Okay. Sorry, it's taking a little time. Okay, so I hope you can see what I have put here. This is an abstract that I've been sent that is a summary that I can have a look at and suggest some things. So gender mainstreaming from an institutional perspective. I like that because it automatically grounds your readers to say, look, this is the perspective that we're taking here for this paper. And, you know, if you're interested in institutions, then, you know, you get a good idea. It also gives you a geographical idea, you know, Ethiopia, and it also says that there's going to be practical examples because it's cases of small and micro irrigation projects. I like that because you're really signposting the way, and you're telling people what they're going to read about, which is really important. It doesn't say, you know, particular results that have come up from the study. But I think that I have to suggest that this is not an abstract per se, it's a summary. So there might be results that are too general or too much to fit in this title. So this is great. You're setting the scene, you know, looking at, you know, in Africa, you know, this is what the studies have done so far, understanding gender dynamics. But, and this is the description of, you know, a research paper saying this is why it hasn't been answered well enough, you know, but as these efforts have been increasing, we don't know enough about such and such. So I think that's great. That's a really great lead in. Then it tells us about what the study has done, and also the research method that they used, which is fantastic. It examines, it's going to tell us a little bit more about the research variables that are used. Something that you might want to do, some journals are okay with this and some aren't. Instead of saying it examines, some journals are okay with using we and our language now. And you may, depending on the journal that you go for, be able to say we examined. So just saying this is about having an active voice and saying who's doing the acting. You're saying we examined. So I would suggest that for summaries that you have to do, and also for journal abstracts that you're allowed to do that in. They give you an idea about the different variables that they've examined, and then they go into looking at the results. I think this is a good summary. I mean, I would have some small changes, but I think it's fantastic. Effective implementation of legal frameworks is facilitated. So this is an example of, I would say, a passive voice sentence that you could change around a little to make it a bit easier to understand. I would say effectively implementing legal frameworks, or the legal frameworks. That's just a shorter, and it gets kind of to the point a bit quicker. That's a change that I would make. And they're still talking about the results here, but implementation is challenged, and talking about some further results here. Further failure by policymakers. Sorry, just reading this. Okay. So this is going into these sentences here, which is fantastic. These sentences here are going into the wider implications of the results from their study. They're saying that if you don't, you know, failure by the policymakers and such, they will be challenges to implementing gender equality. And then just like in the start where you go from general to more specific to introduce the topic, here at the end, they're going specific results to general implications. So I think that that's fantastic. So they have very specific results in here, and then they say if there's a problem with doing that, then you're not going to be able to effectively implement that. And then, but if you can, then this is what could happen. And so in a good way, I think that I think the structure of this this summary is fantastic, and they do a pretty good job language-wise. That's a lot of talking from me. So I'd really love to stop talking and let you talk and ask any questions that you might need.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the feedback. Just one question. What is the difference between summary and abstract? Because
Oh, sorry.
you're saying like this is more a
Could
summary
you,
than an abstract.
sorry, could you go back to the start of your question? It got quieter just as you were asking it.
My question was, what is the difference between a summary and an abstract? Because you were saying the document that you reviewed now is more of a summary than an abstract. So I just want to understand what the difference between the two is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So I would say that one of the main differences between a summary and abstract is number one, audiences. Summaries can be for a very wide set of people. An abstract is specifically for the readers of that journal and people who are interested in your work who might find that later. I would also say that it's the summary that we looked at just now is about the length of some abstracts. The other difference between an abstract and a summary is in word count. So often there'll be a word count limit that you'll find. It's variable between journals. That summary that we looked at was about 260 words, which would be a bit longer than some other journal summaries. I'll have to check whether that, which journal or purpose that summary was for, whether it's an abstract or not. I guess the other difference between a summary and an abstract that I would say I've found is in the language. There are very specific terms, like scientific terms, I would say, that are very precisely meant when it comes to talking about results. And I feel that in summaries, because they are perhaps a little less formal than an abstract, that you can use a little bit more general language and maybe a little bit plainer English than you could in a journal abstract that's very specifically targeted towards that audience.
Thank you, Sarah.
Anytime. We have Els. Did anyone want to ask Els a question? She's the expert here.
I wouldn't claim I'm the expert, but I was also interested in the other group. People shared their abstracts on the screen and then had a look at their abstracts. So I don't know if you had the chance to do that already, but it was an interesting discussion that people had, and there were already a lot of tips from your colleagues that came up when you had a look at your abstracts. Did you have the chance to do that already, or you want to do that, or you have burning questions?
Summaries from other people. We did go through the summary that I was sent, minus the person's name, and I thought it was very well written. And yeah, it was hard to find fault, very hard. So it was fantastic. But I think that having feedback from other people who are in your area but not in your exact specific research area is really fantastic, because it can sometimes show you just the little things that you might think are really common knowledge that someone might point out that they don't understand. So if anyone else wants to share their abstracts, that would be amazing.
So you discussed the abstract by Likinieles?
Yes.
Linda or Mrs. Bagayoko, you want to share and get some feedback? Okay, here we are.
Oh, nice.
Great.
Oh, fantastic. Let me have a read.
It's Linda, but I mean, some background noise here. I can't speak, so just go ahead. I'll be listening.
So I see the relevance in your first sentences. That's great. Yeah. Maybe that first sentence, the place of women, is a bit long and maybe not needed here. And the second sentence of the second paragraph, maybe you can rephrase that as the study objective.
I think that would be good to split out the second sentence of the second paragraph, because what I find is that it mixes in the study objective and the result.
Yep.
And I think that you want to keep those two things separate.
Yep.
Because it lets people, I guess, take a mental breath in between, and it also helps you to emphasize the result there. The other thing is, with a long sentence, what you see is here that women, especially female-headed households, are more vulnerable to the shocks. That's the gold nugget. That's the real important part. And it ends up being at the end of the sentence, which kind of implies that it's the least important part. So that's another reason for splitting it out, because you want to have that, you'd like to have that part of the sentence first up in whatever sentence it appears.
Yeah. Maybe Linda or you, when you look at it now after the session, do you see things that you would do differently, or your colleagues? Do you have some tips for Linda?
Linda, I'm wondering.
Okay, maybe I can. Can you hear me? I would say, like, when I was listening to the conversation before the group work, I was just thinking about how I wanted to, hit the point with the first sentence of the abstract, so that it captures the attention of the reader or the researcher, and also ensuring that I have some of the keywords there, so that it's able to capture the attention of the readers. So yeah, and then I was not too sure about adding if this kind of information is necessary. So yeah, in the abstract. So
no.
Now I know at least. I think else you said that maybe I can probably maybe start it with like the study objective, blah 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 blah. Yeah. So yeah, so I'm seeing at least some ways that I can change it so that it's more succinct and it's able to capture the attention. Yeah.
And one of your colleagues was going to give some comments. Mrs. Bagayoko or Liki, did you want to say something? Okay. And I think we'll be thrown out of the breakout room very soon. Yeah, I would also avoid a bit like words like knock-on effects or holistic or it is critical. I don't know. I think you can write that shorter and more to the point. So what do you want to say rather than using complicated words or sentences?
Okay.
Yeah, you can ditch words there.
What I'm going to do now, I think after this, I'll use the presentation guide just to make sure I capture what is necessary. Yeah.
Follow those structures and build, and just that checklist that Sarah shared was actually quite useful. I think if you answer those questions in your abstract, you probably have a good abstract.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you want to send it through to me after, then we can have a more in-depth discussion.
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, you can send
Sorry.
it to me and then I can send it through to Sarah
Yeah.
or immediately to Sarah. That's also fine, but I'm not sure everybody has your email, Sarah. So.
Oh, I put it in the chat. If
Oh,
anyone
you put
needs
it in the chat? Yeah, then up,
yeah, go for it.
up to them.
Sorry, else I'm returning you all to the main room
Yes, thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan.
now. You have 60 more seconds.
And that, yeah. The first group, Avni or Evaristo or Faridul, you want to?
Okay, maybe on behalf of our group, I think it was very useful. We actually did manage to comment on each other's abstract. I think all the three of us were able to share our abstracts. And I think we had very useful and constructive comments, which were building upon the presentations that had been made earlier on. So it was very, very useful.
Okay, did you have some common things that you noticed? Oh, we missed that in the abstract, or this is something we all should pay attention to?
I think there was a bit of variation. In some cases, it was methodology. In some cases, it was even how maybe to avoid citations in abstracts. And in some cases, also how you link how much information you give on one particular aspect, like background, for instance, maybe trying to balance and give so that you cover the other aspects as well. So it was quite varied.
Okay, this is, I think, useful insights. Thank you. The second group, Linda or Liki or Miss Bagayoko. Anyone who wants to share? Liki, can I assign you to report back?
Sure, Els.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had a great discussion and we reviewed 2 abstracts. And on one of the abstracts, Sarah was commenting on, what we can learn from that abstract, how the structure was, and how to start from a generic one, go to a specific, and then conclude with a generic kind of conclusion. And on the other abstract also, we discussed about how an abstract can be improved by avoiding long and maybe sentences, keeping it short and also to the point, and also to look at the guides or the tips that we are provided with to guide us to improve that abstract. Maybe my colleagues can add on if I miss some points. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of the colleagues who want to add something there? I think you were capturing everything, Liki, and thank you very much. That was also quite interesting to hear your feedback from your learning session. It's again highlighting what we should look at in our abstracts. Then I think we're finished, and I thank you very much for participating. I hope it was useful, and I would like to thank Sarah for these very useful tips that I will also use in the future. And then Alessandra for sharing her her experience and what she looks at when she's looking at abstracts, and then decide on, okay, here, this is missing or this could be added. And so we'll share the PowerPoints so for your reference, and this will also be recorded, and or the plenary session is recorded. You can consult it again. You can also send your abstract if you want copy editing feedback from Sarah, so to me or to Sarah, and then it will come in a few days. Yes, other sessions would be extremely useful. We'll think about it. Thank you for your suggestion, Faridou. Then I wish you a pleasant rest of the day, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Els. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. And thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.